Have you noticed that in each recipe, ingredients are always cooked in a specific order? Do you know why that is? I mean, why do we always cook onions first? This is no accident. It's called aromatics, and mastering this will really level up your cooking skills. Today we're going to explore why you cook garlic, onions, and other things first, what aromatics actually are, and an explanation of the cooking order and the importance. And we're going to demonstrate how these work by cooking a simple stir fry. But first, I'm Brenton. I've been cooking with natural ingredients and without recipes for years. And today I'm going to help you do the same. Aromatics are the vegetables, the herbs, and the spices that we introduce early into a dish. But why do we introduce them early? So let's start cooking, and I'll explain why each ingredient is added in each order. And after we've finished cooking, I'll explain the importance of those specific orders and how it can really build that meal. Onion. Onion is a very common ingredient or vegetable to be cooked at the start of the meal, and hence the aromatics. And there's a few key reasons why that is. First of all, it takes the longest to soften and sweeten, about 5 to 10 minutes plus. It has the most mildest, versatile flavor, so it doesn't clash with other aromatics and helps carry them. And once it's golden, it creates a flavorful, moist base that other aromatics can build into. Pan on, nice and hot, bit of oil, and make sure that it's really hot before we add the onions. It's really hot. Oh yeah. So the onion is cooking in the fat from the oil, or sometimes I use butter, and it actually breaks down the onion. So the sugars start to caramelize, and what you get is the onion that was quite rich and strong tasting and quite hard in texture moves towards a soft caramelized onion. During this process, the onions can dry out, so the water can evaporate, they can soak in all the moisture. And then they can actually burn before they caramelize. So I usually add a little bit of water just to make sure that they're moist. Now in place of the water, you can add other things like vinegar or chicken stock, for example. I usually just use water. Next, we'll add the garlic and the ginger. The general rule of thumb is that the longer cooking, sturdier ingredients, for example, the onion in this case, go in first. Then the quicker, more delicate ones, the garlic and the ginger, go in when the onions are nearly caramelized, and then right before we add the next ingredients. So let's add them in now. So add a little bit of oil. So you don't want to cook the garlic and the ginger too long because it'll burn. Throw in some herbs to add more foundation to the meal. Go rosemary and a bit of paprika and just a little bit more water. There we go. Just have that cook nice and gently. You don't necessarily need to add the rosemary as part of the aromatics. You could add it in the middle or at the end. Once we're finished cooking, I'll explain what the real difference is between adding the start, the middle, and the end. We'll try. Oh yeah. Once you get to that perfect flavor that you're ready to move on from the aromatics to the next part, which will be the broccoli and the carrots, we'll turn it off for a bit so we don't overcook it. Then we'll chop up the vegetables. Carrots and capsicum can be used as aromatics, but in this particular case, we're using them as the main vegetables, that and the broccoli. So they'll be cooked in the order of cooking time. So for example, broccoli takes longer to cook, capsicum and carrot can both be eaten raw, really. So once that's all cut up, turn the pan back on, and broccoli first. And you might need to add a little bit more oil to the mix. While that's happening, we'll put the meat in a separate pan. I could cook it in here with the vegetables, but then the meat would take over the dish. So we're going to cook it separately in a separate pan, help it sear and lock in its own flavor, and then introduce it to the stir fry later. Oh yeah. We'll just turn that down a little bit now that it's cooking with fire. A lot of the times I'll add salt and pepper to the onions when they're just starting to cook, but in this particular time I'm adding it to the meat, so when it's starting to soak in all the flavors around it. Pepper and salt. Stirring it through. I'll put a lid on it so that we can steam the broccoli a little bit, so the steam sort of cooks that broccoli through. The only real way to know if the broccoli is done by tasting it. Pretty good. Not too harsh, it feels cooked. It's time for the other ingredients. Carrots and capsicum. And we'll do the same, we'll stir them through and we'll put the lid back on. Add the meat to the dish, mix it through, and voila. A little bit of peanuts for good luck. Already roasted. So now you know that aromatics are the vegetables, the spices, and the herbs that are cooked early in the dish. But I haven't told you why. It's because they release their flavour and fragrance into the cooking fat, which could be the butter or the oil in my case. And then that releases into the whole dish. They're less about being the main ingredient in the dish, right? For example, the onion's not the main ingredient. But what it does do is that it creates a foundation for the entire dish. And you add all those flavours and that's what becomes the flavour throughout the dish. And so why do aromatics go first? If you were to add an ingredient at the start of the meal, say for example, rosemary, and you cooked it in the oil, then that oil would transfer its flavour through the rest of the dish. Plus, the fat, being oil, breaks down that ingredient. If you add it in the middle, then it fades into the dish and you can't really distinctively tell what it is. If you add it at the end, then it's fresh. So you add rosemary at the end, then that each bite that contains rosemary has that strong rosemary bite, but it doesn't sink into the rest of the dish. Let me know in the comments if there is a vegetable or a spice or a herb, an aromatic that you use at the start of your cooking. If you're liking the content, like and subscribe. If you like this video, you're gonna love this one.